Today, I'm going to simulate Pokemon in real life by raising a team of 6 different Pokemon from babies all the way to evolving them to their final form, simulating their entire life journey from training, exploring, fighting other Pokemon of all sizes, and even going on an epic adventure together as a team. But starting off, the first Pokemon we have is Pikachu. Right now he's super tiny with red cheeks, small claws, and a lightning-shaped tail. Pikachu is an electric type Pokemon that looks a lot like a mouse, but unlike a mouse, this guy can generate electricity. He was instantly super energetic as soon as I put him down, and he started sniffing around and climbing on stuff. Even as a baby, he can generate electricity with his cheeks, but right now it's pretty weak, and for him and the rest of the Pokemon in this video, I'm going to be building them habitats to live in as if they were actual pets. But before we get to that, the next Pokemon we have is Squirtle, a water-type turtle Pokemon that typically lives in ponds, lakes, or near the ocean. This guy can go on both land and water, and he's going to be the only water-type Pokemon we have in this squad, so he's going to need to get really powerful. But first, we're going to see if he can swim for the first time. Okay, it looks like he's pretty good at swimming. Squirtle is also one of the only Pokemon that can completely hide inside of his shell to avoid larger predators, which is definitely going to be useful because right now he's really small. But this next Pokemon is a grass type. This is Bulbusaur. He loves plants, so I immediately let him out in a garden and he started exploring around and eating tomatoes. Bulbusaur has a large plant bulb on his back that he uses to create energy with photosynthesis from the sun, and just like Squirtle, he's going to evolve twice and turn into a much more powerful Pokemon. But while he explores around, let's move on to the next Pokemon, which unlike the 3 we've seen so far, this one can fly. This is a Pidgey, a bird Pokemon, who I let out in my kitchen, and he quickly started flying around and messing with everything he saw. He started tapping on the microwave, picking at a plant, and he seems very energetic, which is good because throughout the video he's going to evolve into larger bird Pokemon. But for now, hopefully he doesn't learn how to open a window. But inside of this next Pokeball is a Diglet. Diglet is a ground type Pokemon who loves the ground, and I'm going to place him on the ground and see what he thinks. Okay, Diglet enjoyed exploring around, and other than the fact that he is the coolest design out of any Pokemon, one of the most unique things that Diglet can do is dig underground fully to hide from predators. He can also use this to sneak up and attack other Pokemon, which will be very useful in the future. But now for the 6th and final Pokemon in our team, this is an Eevee, who immediately started exploring and sniffing around. He's basically as if you got a baby dog, but Eevee is actually one of the most unique Pokemon in the world, not only because he's really soft and fun to pet, but also Eevee can evolve into one of 8 different Pokemon, each of which is a different type. And later in the video, we're going to see what he ends up evolving into. But for now, Eevee was really friendly and explored around the room, excited to be alive. And now we have all 6 of our Pokemon seeing the world for the first time. Okay, but these guys can't just live in random areas around the house, so we're going to build each of them their own habitat to live in. These are 6 empty habitats, and each of them are going to be customized to fit one of the Pokemon. Starting off with Pikachu. For this one, I included a bunch of stuff like a hamster wheel for him to run around on, these electrical transmission towers that he can power up and train with, and some random objects like some logs, a cave, and some plants. And now I'm going to see what he thinks. But next up is Squirtle. Since he's a turtle, this habitat is going to have a land section and a water section. For the land, I included some large rocks, a cave, and some plants. And then for the water, the tank is going to be filled up halfway with water so that he has enough water to swim in without drowning. Because for now, he's still really tiny. And now I'm going to place him on the land and introduce him to his new home. Squirtle started swimming around, dipping his toes into the sand, and I think this is definitely the perfect home for him to be raised in. He's definitely cooler than any normal pet turtle you can get. Okay, but now switching away from an ocean environment, Bulbasaur is going to have a forest-themed habitat with plants, bushes, trees, and a bunch of other green stuff. I also added a water bowl that he can drink out of because later I'm going to be feeding all 6 of these Pokemon different foods. But now I'm going to add him in on this dirt and see what he thinks. He started exploring around, snuggling inside of the plants, and quickly made himself at home in all of the green stuff. But this next habitat is much bigger. Since it's for Pidgey, it's way taller so that he can fly around, and I kept it pretty basic and included a few tree branches on the walls for him to perch on, a tiny birdhouse, and a bowl for some food. Let's see what he thinks. Okay, this guy is very energetic. So let's move on to Diglet. Diglet's habitat is going to be a bunch of soil and dirt with tiny underground pathways for him to explore through. He's pretty basic, so this should be enough. Okay, finally, Eevee's habitat is going to be the largest since he needs a lot of room to run around. For this one, I included a carpet, a small dog bed, a bowl for water and food, and some random toys and Pokemon stuffed animals scattered around the place. Let's see what he thinks. And now that we've added Eevee in, all 6 of the Pokemon are now in their habitats, exploring around, learning more about themselves, and finally having their own place to call home. These 6 Pokemon eat a variety of different foods in the wild, so I'm going to give them each something different. Once they get larger, they're going to even start eating other smaller Pokemon. For now, since they're babies, here's what they're going to get. I gave Pikachu some berries, Squirtle ate a piece of fish, Bulbusaur got some vegetables since he likes plants, Pidgey got some seeds, Diglet ate a worm, and Eevee got a Pokepuff, which is a cake-like food that when eaten by Pokemon makes them like you more. These Pokemon will eventually need a hunt for their own food once they're released into the wild later in their life, but the next step for these Pokemon to develop is to take them outside. I placed all of them down in the backyard, and immediately they were pretty shy as they were seeing other Pokemon for the very first time in their life. So they ended up spreading apart and started exploring different parts of the backyard. Eevee ran through some bushes and discovered a flower patch that he started rolling around in, and Pikachu was running around in the grass until he eventually found a nearby forest where he started climbing up a tree and found a spot to rest on top. He just wanted to take a nap in peace. Pidgey flew around the backyard, stretching his wings and exploring different parts, and even looked around in the trees for some more food. But meanwhile, Diglet, after digging himself underground and exploring there, popped back up and accidentally crossed paths with a much larger electric-type Pokemon. But he quickly dug himself inside to social distance away and protect himself. And while all that was happening, Bulbasaur and Squirtle were walking around alone, but soon crossed paths, and this time started fighting each other and getting territorial. And little did they know that a larger Pokemon was sleeping nearby, and their little wrestling match had woke him up. This is a wild Ursaring, a large bear Pokemon that was one of the main predators living in this forest. He woke up angry, hungry, and soon found our baby Pokemon. He roared at Pidgey, woke up Pikachu from his power nap, and soon caught the attention of all 6 of our Pokemon, who were now forced to team up to defend themselves against this giant bear. Since they were a lot smaller, they attacked him from every side, distracting him from being able to focus on eating one of them. But they were still too small to do any actual damage to him. They didn't know any strong moves yet, so they just started clawing, biting, and pecking the Ursaring, annoying him and dodging being ripped apart. And eventually, after being harassed for a few minutes, it caused Ursaring to be fed up with all these little pests and walked away from them to find a larger meal that was worth the hunt. These guys were basically like chicken nuggets to him. They narrowly survived this attack from a giant predator, so I brought them back inside to safety to rest up together. But over the course of the next few weeks, the Pokemon had started to venture into the wild and train more and more, learning different attacks and gaining experience battling all sorts of Pokemon. They fought alone, fought with each other, but still occasionally messed with the wrong opponent. Bulbasaur had accidentally encountered a massive Arcanine Pokemon and tried to quietly retreat inside of a tree stump, but was noticed by the Arcanine. But in the wild, there's always a larger Pokemon. A Garchomp attacked the Arcanine, overpowering him and unknowingly saving Bulbasaur's life. Aside from fighting and exploring the forest, each Pokemon also developed their own personality, and I found them doing some really cool stuff around the house. Pikachu was able to charge my phone for me in seconds, Squirtle started reading complex literature, Pidgey started playing around with toy cars, and Diglet used his digging ability and round body shape to hide in some random spaces. All of them also grew closer together over time and became best friends, eating dinner together, playing video games together, and even moved to sleeping in an actual bed as they got larger. But little did they know that a strange ghost-type Pokemon had been watching them the whole time. And now that they were larger, I also started feeding them other smaller Pokemon. Bulbusaur ate bug-type Pokemon like Caterpie, and Squirtle hunted and ate small fish Pokemon like Magikarp. And they continued to get bigger and stronger, fighting larger wild Pokemon and learning new attacks. Until they had started to evolve into the next stage of their journey, starting with Bulbasaur, who evolved into Ivysaur, becoming larger and stronger, with the plant on his back starting to bloom. And just as that was happening, Squirtle was fighting a wild Raticate, blasting water in his face, and just like Bulbasaur, evolved into his second evolution. This is Wartortle. He now has large ears on his head, is darker blue, and almost 2 feet taller. And now with his new form, he's much more prepared to venture into the ocean and swim around larger water type Pokemon, which will all happen soon. But those two weren't the only ones who evolved, because Pidgey, after landing a sneak attack, evolved into Pidgeotto, with a wingspan 2 times as large as Pidgey's, giving him the ability to fly faster and much farther. The other 3 Pokemon still haven't evolved, but their journey has a long way to go. And even the 3 Pokemon that have evolved still have another form that they can evolve into, so they have to get a lot stronger and battle a lot more Pokemon in order to get there. But now that half our Pokemon team is a lot bigger, I'm gonna build them a Pokemon sanctuary right here to live in all together so that they have more space to grow and train. And here is the finished habitat. It combines the environment type of all 6 of the Pokemon with a river down the middle for Wartortle to swim in, a grassy section with some tall trees for Ivysaur, a dirt hill for Diglet to dig through and pop holes out of, and an electrical tower for Pikachu to channel his powers through. Eevee has a bunch of space around the entire habitat to run around, and he started rolling in some mud. Pidgeotto flew everywhere, exploring around and stretching his wings more, and keeping a watch over the entire place. As the day went on, they were all super happy to now have a much larger habitat with fresh air, plenty of room to run around, and were able to hang out with each other in peace. But then, their fun quickly stopped. Out of nowhere, the ghost-type Pokemon that had been stalking everyone earlier had followed them and attacked. And this time, he wasn't alone, and all of our Pokemon were sneak attacked at the same time. There was a Ghastly, a Haunter, and a Gengar. 3 strong ghost-type Pokemon that for some reason attacked our Pokemon team as they were going to bed. Our Pokemon put up a fight, outnumbering the ghosts, but then the Ghastly and Gengar used an attack that put our Pokemon to sleep. And after a full 12 hours, our Pokemon slowly woke up, frustrated that their new home was invaded and they lost the fight. But they quickly realized it was even worse because one of them went missing. The 3 ghost Pokemon had kidnapped Pikachu and left into the night with him. And after realizing that they had lost their friend and had no idea where he was, our Pokemon were angry, sad, and felt defeated. They wanted to get him back, and while they were coming up with a plan to look for him, the 3 ghost-type Pokemon took Pikachu to an abandoned castle on an island. They had taken him to the home of a dark-type legendary Pokemon, Darkrai, a dark Pokemon that gave other Pokemon nightmares. But the other 5 Pokemon had no idea where Pikachu went, but they had to get their friend back. And after a lot of arguing and a lot of crying, they decided to split up in order to cover more ground and have a better chance at finding him. With Wartortle venturing into the ocean, Ivysaur through the forests, Pidgeotto through the air, and everyone else spreading out. They were all now by themselves for the very first time since they were in their tiny glass habitats. Except this time, they aren't in a protected house being taken care of. They're on their own, in the wild, encountering Pokemon of all different sizes on the way, and needing to hunt for their own food to survive. All while searching for their lost friend that was kidnapped. Wartortle encountered a jellyfish Pokemon, While Pidgeotto was searching through big cities, Diglet started exploring through some gardens, Eevee rode on a train to cover more ground, and Ivysaur went deep into the forest, meeting colonies of bug and grass Pokemon while he explored and looked around for the ghost Pokemon. But instead of finding the ghosts, he got in a fight with a Vigoroth, a large sloth Pokemon. And after absolutely pummeling him, Ivysaur became the first Pokemon to evolve into its final form, a Venusaur. Now over 220 pounds and over 20 times the size of when he first got him, this guy was a beast. And around the same time, Diglet evolved into his second and final evolution, Dugtrio. Now he has 3 heads that he can attack with, and he's a lot better at digging. Bro pretty much multiplied by 3. But meanwhile, Eevee started learning new attacks and was able to beat Pokemon larger than him using his small size and his stealthiness. And all while that was happening, Pidgeotto was fighting a Golbat in the streets of New York City. And after smashing him on a road, he evolved into his final evolution, Pidgeot, now a much bigger bird that even humans were afraid of. With sharper claws, better vision, and stronger wings, he ended up meeting up with Venusaur and Diglet and took them on a ride looking for the Pikachu from above the sea. But meanwhile, Wartortle, after exploring deeper parts of the ocean, encountering many ocean Pokemon on the way, he found himself in trouble with a wild, hungry Gyarados that was way larger than him. And right as he was about to be finished, the Wartortle evolved into his final evolution, Blastoise. Now able to stand his ground against the Gyarados, he managed to get away and swim through the ocean as one of the most feared beasts in the sea. He had gone from a baby Squirtle that wrestled a tiny Magikarp to now eating large fish Pokemon like this wild Basculin. And after many more days of swimming and exploring the ocean, he was the first to find Pikachu. After landing on the island was filled with purple fog, and Darkrai sat on a throne in the middle of it with Pikachu asleep in front of him, surrounded by dark energy. And soon, the other Pokemon arrived, joining Blastoise and finally regrouping. 4 out of 5 of them had now evolved into their final evolution. They were stronger than ever before and walked towards Darkrai, ready to get their friend back. But Darkrai wasn't alone. He summoned an entire army of ghost-type Pokemon that attacked our team and instantly turned the island into chaos. The ghost Pokemon were attacking from every side and completely swarmed our team, who had no choice but to fight back. But unlike last time when their home was invaded, our team were now able to overpower the ghost Pokemon despite being outnumbered and surrounded. As after evolving, learning new attacks, and gaining experience on their journey here, our Pokemon were much stronger and soon defeated all of the ghosts, leaving Darkrai alone and the only thing that stood in their way. But Darkrai wasn't any ordinary Pokemon. He was a legendary Pokemon and the strongest that any of them had ever faced before. He was now ready to fight them and started flying up into the sky. Our Pokemon decided to strike first and fired attacks at him. Darkrai used his power to block all of them and launch counterattacks. He fired a Shadow Ball at Eevee and Dugtrio that left them suffering in pain, and he blasted Venusaur and Blastoise with dark energy that knocked them down. Pidgeot tried to attack from the air, but there was no point. Darkrai was too fast and blasted him to the ground, leaving him in constant pain. But little did Darkrai know that while he was doing all of that, Pikachu had slowly woken up under his chin and ran away to not be spotted. Pikachu ran to the back of the island, trying to think of a plan to save his friends, who were suffering from Darkrai's wrath. But just as that was happening, a bright golden light had caught his attention. Pikachu walked up to the chest that it was coming from and found a golden stone inside. This is a Thunderstone that Pikachu immediately grabbed, causing him to evolve into a Raichu, Pikachu's final evolution with more enhanced electric powers. But that Thunderstone wasn't the only stone in the chest. Raichu decided to grab the bright red stone, which was a Firestone, and he ran back into the battle with it, where he threw it at the only Pokemon that hadn't evolved yet, Eevee. who despite being in pain from Darkrai's powers, consumed the Fire Stone, turning him into a Flareon. He now evolved from a normal type Pokemon into a fire type Pokemon and learned new attacks that he could use. But right as Raichu threw the stone, he had caught the Darkrai's attention, who shifted his focus at him, angry that he had been able to escape right under his nose. But before Darkrai could launch an attack, Raichu quickly tackled him using all of his electric power, shocking him in place while clinging onto his floating body. And while this was happening, the other Pokemon had started to recover to their feet, and seeing that Darkrai was paralyzed by the Raichu, they all fired attacks at him with everything they had. The combined power of all 6 of the Pokemon quickly overwhelmed Darkrai, who could no longer hold it and collapsed to the ground defeated. And just like that, our team of Pokemon had defeated the legendary Pokemon Darkrai and reached the final stage of their journey together. They had gone from tiny little Pokemon in glass cages that could fit in a human hand to a fully evolved team of 6 that defeated one of the strongest Pokemon in the world, and they now have the freedom to venture out anywhere into the world and stay as a team for the rest of their life. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I genuinely really appreciate it. If you want to see another Pokemon video, this time where I raise a pet Charmander, click on this video right here and subscribe, because I'm going to keep making these videos for you guys, and I'll see you next time.